Ramadan Kareem. Our Ramadan dialogues have touched on a wide variety of subjects, from the Sahel to Syria, and nuclear negotiations to melting glaciers. It is clear that the NESA region is home to a diverse range of problems and issues. Indeed, the only thing that all the countries in our region seem to have in common is that they are undergoing or affected by regional change. Many of you have likely heard me refer to the Arab Spring as the Middle East transitions. This term indicates my belief that the revolutions and regime changes that we saw beginning in the Arab world in 2011 will not be contained to the Arab world, nor come to their ends for decades, nor indeed will they be limited to changes in political leadership. In addition to these Middle East transitions, Central and South Asia are witnessing historic economic, political, and environmental change. Now, change is not always a bad thing. Indeed, many of the changes the region is experiencing are necessary and will be beneficial in the long term. Yet, for the people undergoing these transitions, the current situation must seem unstable, uncertain, and unsafe. Managing these diverse and widespread transitions certainly appears to be a daunting task. Yet we should not let these difficulties overshadow the tremendous capabilities the region can draw by utilizing the combined strength of its various members. Greater integration and coordination between regional member states can make managing transitions for positive outcomes less painful and more likely to succeed. Why regional institutions? Regional institutions and organizations are the most effective vehicles for empowering regional coordination and integration. Countries are safer and more prosperous when their neighbors are stable and secure, while external forces such as NATO can certainly help to promote this stability, and regional countries have the cultural, economic, and political ties that allow them to find solutions that more accurately fit their needs and those of their neighbors. When neighboring countries support each other during times of turmoil and difficult transition, they can build lasting ties that translate into future peace and prosperity. Yemen is a case in point. Yemen faces profound political, socio-economic, and economic challenges. I touched on these in a previous dialogue. The political crisis that is front and center now, as difficult as it is to resolve, will not put Yemen on a sustainable path to stability, security, and prosperity unless severe economic problems are resolved. Yemen's financial situation is dire. Unemployment and underemployment are well over 50%. The country is rapidly running out of energy and water, while a high percentage of Yemenis live on less than $2 per day. The GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council, as a regional institution, has led the way in helping Yemen to manage its transition. The political transition is on a difficult but steady course. The economic and socio-economic transitions, however, have yet to embark on similar paths. Despite the availability of funds and the political will on the part of the GCC countries, as well as the many countries represented in what's called the Friends of Yemen, little has actually been done to move Yemen forward socio-economically and economically. The disparate efforts and projects that these countries propose often do not match up with the Yemen governmental goals and designs. The result is that Yemenis remain trapped in a stagnant political system and stalled economy, while the money for their recovery flows to development projects that provide no relief or are endlessly redundant. The money and efforts to move Yemen forward need to be coordinated so that they both reduce redundancy as well as match the needs and goals of the Yemeni government and people. To do this, I have suggested in previous commentaries that a, quote, fund of funds for Yemen be created. A fund of funds would be in charge of bundling and coordinating the various efforts to rebuild Yemen. It would place them under the purview of one independent organization. For example, either the Arab Fund or the Islamic Development Bank could easily play the role of arbiter in this case. Their job would be to transparently and independently match programs with resources and provide full accountability to the Yemeni government and people, as well as all the donors. Consolidating funds and responsibility in the hands of an independent organization that will approach Yemeni development with regional, not narrow national interests in mind, would ensure that the Yemen that emerges from this transition is one that helps to make the Gulf a safer and more prosperous part of the globe. Let me talk about the failure of international organizations. The ongoing crisis in Syria demonstrates the importance of regionalism in the face of failing international institutions. The escalating levels of violence and the crimes of the Assad regime are truly appalling. The continuing massacres, bombings, and torture are an indictment of the mechanisms that the international community relies upon to resolve situations like these. The UN transition deal is only the most recent example of the inadequacies of international institutions. The situation in Syria demands strong and decisive action. 300 peacekeepers and a transition council that leaves the option of an Assad-led Syria open is not a satisfactory solution for the people on the ground. In fact, it is not a solution at all. Solutions to crises like these only come when actors have vested interests in their outcomes. The failure of the international community to adequately respond to the Syrian crisis results from the inability of international mechanisms to take the various interests and equities of those with stakes in the crisis fully into account. This failure to act should force us to reconsider our approach to these issues. Again, now is the time to look for regional solutions to regional problems. In my view, it is also the time for the Arab League to take charge of managing this crisis. One way it can start doing this is by encouraging the defection of more high-ranking members of the regime. The recent defection of General Talas shows that the regime is splintering. More importantly, it demonstrates the resiliency of the opposition. The Arab League can and should take this opportunity to back this up with more concrete support, more than material support. This could give the opposition what it most sorely needs: hope. Additionally, the Arab League can use all the tools available to it, diplomatic, economic, energy, and financial, to bring regional countries and key global actors to accept a path to transition in Syria that will end the bloodshed and the destruction and bring all parties to the table to shape a new, stable, secure, and prosperous Syria. This is a responsibility the Arab League must not shirk. The UN has failed in its own noble attempts to find solutions. Only a regional solution, with support from outside countries of goodwill, seems likely to prevent the Syrian crisis from becoming a regional one that threatens stability from Egypt to Iran, Turkey to the Gulf. New institutions for a changing world. Of course, not all the changes in the NESA region are related to revolution and war. As I noted in a previous dialogue, climate change has the potential to precipitate a change of transitions and crises in Central and South Asia. I won't go into detail here, as I've spoken about this in a previous dialogue, but suffice it to say that changes in the availability of fresh water throughout the region will threaten the livelihoods of up to 3 billion people, nearly half the world's population, if action is not taken soon. Solutions to this issue must take into account local environmental factors, as well as the needs and equities of peoples separated by mountains, rivers, languages, religions, and governments. The only way that all of these different issues can be adequately dealt with is if they are approached through a regional framework. Earlier in the Ramadan dialogues, I proposed the formation of a Himalayan Watershed Cooperation Council, HWCC. This council would be unique in the region in that it would not only regulate how much water each country is allotted, but how each country could use their freshwater resources. A regional treaty could be negotiated that sets standards for water usage throughout the region. These standards could regulate everything from irrigation techniques to the trade in hydropower. Each regional country would then be able to appoint a member to the council, which would be empowered to act as an impartial referee to ensure that these standards are maintained. The success of this council, of course, will depend on its ability to be inclusive and to take into account the various and often conflicting equities of regional members related to water usage. Forming such a council would require regional members to abandon the water strategies that they have pursued for over 50 years and set aside long-standing rivalries and conflicts. Yet, the importance of this issue may just be the impetus the region needs to overcome these obstacles. In conclusion, the world may indeed be on a trajectory toward greater global integration. Yet the problems that have arisen as we have followed that path have actually served to highlight the importance of regional relations. The crises in Yemen, Syria, and the Himalayan watershed are all areas in which regional institutions can be utilized to find solutions to regional problems. By building on ties based on geographic proximity, cultural linkages, and shared political objectives, the region can manage the transitions occurring throughout in a way that fits its specific needs and goals. I hope this installment of the NESA Ramadan Dialogues has been useful and informative. As always, I welcome your comments and criticisms. Thank you, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.
For further information or to comment or pose a question, please email NESA Communications at ndu.edu. Learn more about NESA on our website at nesacenter.org, on YouTube at the NESA Center channel, on Twitter at the NESA Center, or on Facebook, facebook.com/NESA Center.